Hello knitters, Elena here from Knitting Confessions. I wanted to do a quick tutorial on how I do provisional cast on in the round. I know there are a ton of these videos out there, but I just wanted to share my tips and tricks. Hopefully you'll find them interesting. So let's get started. So this is everything that you're going to need. So you have your waste yarn, your knitting needles, your crochet hook. I like to use a tapestry needle and some fishing line to put in a lifeline, and I'll show you how I do that. I find it just makes it a little easier when you're unraveling your stitches, and then of course the yarn you're going to be knitting with. So let's get started here. So for the first part, all you're going to need is your waste yarn, your knitting needles, and your crochet hook. And you start by making a slip knot. Now if you've never made a slip knot before, it's really easy. You take your yarn, you wrap it around your index finger so that it makes a loop, and then you take the tail with the end and you just make another loop and you pull it through the first loop like that. Let go, which is always scary. You grab the loop that you've pushed through and just pull, and there you have it. You take your crochet hook and you pull it, or you put it through your loop, and then you just pull on the side, and ta-da, that's all there is to it. So to start, you are going to do some single crochet chain, and so you take your yarn and you've already got your first loop, and all you do is you take your crochet hook, pull it behind your yarn so you're picking up the stitch, and pull it through the loop, and that is it. That's one stitch. So again, take your crochet hook, put it behind your yarn, making sure that you're picking up the yarn, and pull it through, and now you've got two crochet chains. Again, yarn below, pull it through the loop. I like to do about 5 of these, just so that I know where the end of it is. So that's 4 and that's 5. And now we're ready to actually do the provisional cast on. So you pick up your knitting needles with your left hand, and in your right hand you're holding your crochet hook with the yarn. And all you do is you take your yarn, you put it behind your knitting needle like so, take your crochet hook going over the knitting needle, and you're just going to pick up the yarn again just like you were to do a single crochet chain, and you pull it through, and that is it. Now you have one stitch on your knitting needle. So again, you're going to bring the yarn behind the needle, with your crochet hook go over the needle, pick up your yarn, and pull it through. Now that's 2 stitches. So again, behind your needle, crochet hook over the top, picking up the yarn and pulling it through. That's 3. And so you're just going to do this for however many stitches your pattern calls for. It can be a little fiddly at first, but you really start to get the hang of it the more you do it. I used to be terrified of provisional cast-ons, and it took me forever to figure it out, so it just takes practice. The more you do it, the more your hands get used to the motions, and then it just becomes muscle memory and you can get going pretty fast. I'm not going to make you watch me do all of my stitches. This pattern I'm casting on for calls for quite a bit, so bear with me, and I'll be back in just a moment to show you what I do when I near the end. Alright, so I have now cast on all of my stitches, all 152 for this pattern, and so what I find really helpful when doing provisional cast on in the round only is to cast on 1 extra stitch. I find it makes the joining in the round a little bit easier. Okay, so I have my extra stitch, and now just like how when we started, we're going to do just some more crochet chains. I like to do 10 at the end just so that it's longer, so that I know where my front and my back are when I go to unravel. So just to remind everyone how to do it, with your crochet hook, you go underneath the yarn, pick it up and pull it through the loop that's already on your needle. And then again underneath, pull the yarn through. And so I just do that, like I said, for about 10. Doesn't really matter. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I have 12 this time, not a big deal. And then all you're going to do is break your yarn, and then you'll pull the yarn tail through. Doesn't matter how long your tail is, it doesn't need to be long. I like to just leave a couple inches. And so you cut it, and then you just pull your yarn through like you were making another loop, but all the way through. And now it's nice and snug. Okay, so now we're going to join in the round, and different knitters do it different ways, but like I said, this is the way that I find works best for me. So you want to push all your stitches so that they're on their tips, making sure that you haven't twisted your stitches, because then you're in trouble. And so there they all are, and if you remember, I cast on an extra stitch at the end. And so what I do is I take that extra stitch from my left hand needle. This is where I ended. See, it has the longer chain. The right hand needle is where I started my provisional cast on, and it has the shorter chain. So with the left hand needle, you're just going to take that last, or I guess first stitch, and you're going to slip it off your needle onto your right hand needle. And then you can either knit these two stitches together or pass the first stitch on the right hand needle over the stitch that you just slipped. I prefer slipping it over. I find I just like how it looks a little better. And again, it doesn't really matter because you're going to unravel all of this anyway. So just like that. So there's my slip stitch over the first stitch from my left hand needle. And now you have joined in the round, and you're ready to get started with your actual yarn that you're going to be knitting your project with. And so I will just show you how I do it. I don't place my marker in the beginning because it's really obvious when you start and when you end, just for the first round. So you just start knitting. It's however the pattern calls for it. In this case, it's just knitting just regular knit stitch, and it can be a little fiddly in the beginning because all your stitches are really tight. So don't worry, after you've done your first row, after the provisional cast on, it gets much looser. Oops. And I like to leave a good sized tail. And yeah, you just knit all the way around. And I'm not going to make you watch me knit all of this, but I am going to show you what it looks like after I've knit the first round, because that's when I place my lifeline. So bear with me. Okay, so now I have finished knitting all the way around my first row of this project. And so it looks a little wrinkly, but that's okay because we ensured that we didn't twist. Okay, so as you can see, we've already joined in the round because we passed that stitch over. What I like to do, because most of the time when you are doing a provisional cast on, you are grafting using a Kitchener stitch. And Kitchener stitch, just like provisional cast on, used to scare me half to death. And so I've learned over the years that by adding in a lifeline, it makes it so much easier when you're unraveling and picking up stitches. So I like to use just regular old fishing line, nothing fancy. It's really strong, it's durable, and it's clear, so you don't have to worry about anything bleeding, and it won't snag your yarn regardless of what you're using. It's really, really great, and it's a lot cheaper than dental floss, and it's reusable. which is great. And so all I do is I just take my fishing line, I know it's hard to see, it's clear, with my tapestry needle, and I thread it through, and then I'm just going to insert it through all of my stitches and come out the other end. It can be a little fiddly when it's on the needle, so if you just push all your stitches so they're off the needles, and it doesn't matter which direction you go, it's all going to end up the same. And as you can see, I'm just pushing it through all the stitches, making sure that I pick them all up and that I don't drop any, and then you can just kind of start cinching them through your needle like so. And then every once in a while I'll just take the needle and pull, scoot the stitches up a bit, and then just continue down the stitches all the way around. And that's all there is to it. It's really easy, and it just makes it, again, so much easier when you're picking up your stitches and you're doing your Kitchener stitch, just ensuring that you don't accidentally drop any stitches. I always leave a nice long tail when I knot the knitting, or when I knot the fishing line together, just so that when it's blocking, it's not too tight and can block to the proper width. Obviously the cable, the knitting cable, is much smaller circumference than what the actual finished will be. Another tip is that I like to use yarn that is a different color from the yarn that I'm using to knit my project. Just makes it easier to see when you're picking up your stitches at the end. And so I hope you guys found that this video was helpful, sharing my tricks. Hopefully some of these things you haven't seen before. It was a good refresher, and I just want to show you at the end here. Bear with me, almost done. All right. Oops. And that happens too. Sometimes your needle goes through and the fishing line does not. But it's just very easy, and it just really slides through. There we go. Okay. So like I said, I just make sure that I have way more than I'm ever going to need. And you just take the two ends and just knot it together. It can be kind of annoying when you're knitting. It gets in the way for the first inch or two, but then after that, it's not a big deal. And there you go. That's all there is to it. And you just continue your pattern until the end. I hope you found that helpful, and happy knitting.